Oh look, now they're canceling people for admitting that the film that wasn't made for them wasn't made for them. I'm shocked. Welcome to current year, where not a day will go by without some tribalist nonsense. Today's retardation? A film critic gets canceled for doing his job. See, as a film critic for Cinema Blend, Sean O'Connell is supposed to watch movies and, wait for it, give his opinion of them. That opinion could be negative, it could be positive, it could be Tim Pool milquetoast. Either way, it's still just his opinion. And no normal person would lose their mind if they found out that Sean thought the movie was a little meh and he wasn't part of the target audience. Of course, we're not dealing with normal people, which is why Sean's very mild critique of Pixar's Turning Red landed him in the bowels of the woke left. And they'd just been to Taco Bell, so them bowels was rumbling. They took to Twitter, like I needed to tell you that, to loose those bowels, saying, quote, "God, this is terrible criticism. Writing about art requires empathy. This wasn't made for me as a starting point, not the point." That's true, which is probably why Sean followed up the subtitle with a 1,000-word review of the film, explaining his opinions about the story, the themes, and the characters. If you'd read it, you'd have known that. Then we got, quote, "This is what happened when white males are presented as a default. Audiences have empathized with white male protagonists forever, but you get one Asian girl in animation and these people question their existence." Or, to quote Sean, "By rooting Turning Red specifically in the Asian community of Toronto, the film legitimately feels like it was made for Dami Chi's friends and immediate family members, which is fine, but also a tad limiting in its scope." To which one of these people might say, quote, "Turning Red's specificity is one of the most charming things about it. I'm not in it, therefore it is exhausting is an awful and frankly privileged way to engage or not engage with art." Interesting, because y'all have been preaching the need to be able to see yourselves in everything you watch for a long time. You've made this a priority for creators. Every member of an audience must be able to see themselves in the film or the film is privileged nonsense. Now, when someone follows your own standard, it's suddenly privileged to want to see yourself in the films you watch? This makes zero logical sense, but it's not meant to. The real issue these people have is that O'Connell didn't like the film. His critique was fair and very tame. He basically said it was an okay ripoff of Teen Wolf, kind of meandering in its plot and story, and too culturally specific to have broad appeal. Or, as a woke would say, easily the most horrendous words ever written about a film. The gall. The unmitigated gall to be so neutral. Obviously, Cinema Blend pulled the review and apologized, saying that the review should have never been published because someone acknowledging that a film wasn't made for them is now a bad thing. I read Sean's review, and I thought the review was fine, but just for the sake of fairness, I went ahead and watched Turning Red. Turns out, Sean was right that, quote, "The thematic split that tears Turning Red to shreds is the mystical red panda bit, which is radically different from the grounded teenage girl faces fears of growing up, and often makes Dami Chi's movie feel like two stories working in opposition of each other. Mei Lin, the main character, comes across as annoying for the first 20 minutes of the film. Everything seems to revolve around her overbearing mother and May's attempt to express her independence as a now grown-up 13-year-old, while still trying to please her mother. May does have a father, he just doesn't matter to the story, or really to her, and could be completely removed and wouldn't be missed. May's friends are various stereotypes, the tomboy, the quiet broody one, and the loud chubby one. They're starting to get boy crazy and are obsessed with some boy band they dream of one day seeing in concert. The opening of the film sets up this conflict between May's real nature with her friends and the act she's forced to put on to please her mother. That's seemingly the plot of the film, which isn't exactly the best material for a Pixar or Disney film, but it still works. Then, out of nowhere, May turns into a red panda. The connection is that May's family ancestors are associated with red pandas, and the family temple is also dedicated to red pandas. Obviously, there's going to be more to our ancestors just being friends with red pandas, and yes, I did assume that maybe one of them had sex with a panda. But the problem, as Sean points out, is that this plot point is completely disconnected from everything in the first part of the film. May's mother knows May will eventually turn into a red panda, like all the women in their family, but she never warns May about this. And if you're thinking that May's mother's overbearing behavior comes from her trying to prevent that change, nope. When the change happens, she assumes May just got her period, of which the red panda is kind of an obvious metaphor. There's no direct connection with May's mother's behavior until the final act of the film, where she apologizes for her behavior, hoping that her behavior hasn't led May to feeling that she wasn't good enough. The mother's experience with her panda, which went much worse, is explored at the end of the film as well, but never tied into May's story or how her mother treats her. You could kind of infer it, but it's such an important aspect of the mother's character that it should be upfront. It should be that she's trying to prevent May from making her mistakes, but instead doing to May what was done to her, inadvertently causing the very thing she's trying to prevent, while also ignoring that her daughter isn't her. So that doesn't mean things will turn out the same way. Since neither of these are connected in the story, all we get of May's change into a red panda is that it makes her feel miserable and embarrassed, which is a common experience for teenagers during puberty. However, that doesn't last because when she gets caught as a panda, first by her friends and then by classmates, everyone is basically cool with it. It kills the tension of May's insecurities because everybody likes her panda mode. All the drama really hinges on the mother-daughter relationship, but the film doesn't. It bounces around from May's conflict with her mother to May being the cool kid until it finally decides to address why May's mother is the way she is. It's basically the Joy Luck Club with all the family drama, the part that made the novel and the film great, cut out until the very end. The film really doesn't earn the weight of the ending, although the final climactic scene with May and her mother still works. That just shows the power of that kind of story. Too bad the rest of the film didn't have it. A great example of what happens when the whole film focuses on that story is How to Train Your Dragon. The film is about the father-son conflict with Hiccup and his father, and Hiccup becoming his own man by finding Toothless. The two parts are connected by Toothless being a dragon and Hiccup's entire tribe, especially his father, being dragon slayers. Hiccup's bond with Toothless worsens the conflict with his father. That makes the father's turnaround at the end of the film more powerful. In Turning Red, May's change it to the panda only strengthens her mother's overbearing nature, but never makes her question her daughter. It actually does the opposite. When May sneaks out to go to the bully's party and her mother finds out, her mother scolds May's friends, assuming they manipulated her into going, never assuming May wanted to do any of it. That moment could have worked if May's mother had any prior interactions with the friends, but she didn't. She just mentions that she doesn't like the tomboy. I think the reason Turning Red winds up like this is because of its specificity. The film feels autobiographical, like Dami-Chi took snippets of her life and made a movie out of it. The problem is that it's just random snippets thrown together in sequential order, and then presented as if that makes the story, themes, and plot cohesive. It doesn't. Instead, it just comes across like no one was willing to tell the writers of the film that this didn't work. Contrast that with the equally autobiographical Luca, which literally has a character named after the director's childhood best friend. Just like Turning Red, Luca is set in a particular time and place. It features a kid trying to find himself, a kid with an overbearing mother holding him back, and a present but useless father, and a kid with a secret to hide from the world. Yet Luca works because all those elements are interconnected thematically and plot-wise. Luca's new friendship with Alberto causes conflict with Luca and his mother, causing Luca to run away with Alberto. The boys go to a village that hates and kills sea monsters like them, so they have to hide what they are, with the obvious scenario being that someone will eventually find out. And when that happens, it creates a rift between Luca and Alberto. It's the second most powerful moment in the film, the most powerful being when Alberto reveals what he thinks about himself. I see why gay people assume this movie was about them. It's still not about them, but you can totally see how it applies. And that happens because all the elements, from the fantasy of the sea monsters to the reality of the conflicted relationships, are intertwined. Turning Red is missing that until the last third of the film. As for the film not being for certain people, yeah, I can see how Sean would get that, given that the film is so meandering that it's hard for people not in the know of whatever's happening in the film to get it. It's kind of like asking someone who never played Final Fantasy VII to watch Final Fantasy Advent Children. They're not going to get it, and they're probably going to hate you a little bit for it. Still, nearly 20 years later. Like Sean McConnell said, Turning Red is a very particular story, and while it could have broad appeal, it feels like a mid-tier film meant for a very specific group of people. There's a better version of the film trapped inside this one. Maybe at the next Red Moon it'll come out. But what do I know? I'm just some guy.